There's a strange moment every man faces at least once in his life. A moment when he suddenly realizes he's giving his best to someone who ice and tea, giving even half of that back. You show effort, you show heart, you show loyalty, and somehow you end up feeling like a background character in your own story. But what if the shift has nothing to do with how much you give, and everything to do with one quiet habit you don't even realize you're redoing? A habit that slowly drains your value. A habit that makes you look replaceable even when you're not. A habit that turns you from a priority into an afterthought. And here's the twist. The moment you stop doing this one thing, the entire dynamic changes. Not because you played games, not because you became cold, but because you return to yourself. This is where Stoicism enters the picture, and everything starts to make sense. Before we dive in, if you enjoy content that helps you grow stronger, calmer, and harder to shake, make sure to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who needs it today. It helps the channel more than you know, and it makes sure you never miss another deep dive like this. Every man has felt that uneasy shift, the moment when a woman who once seemed excited, responsive, and engaged suddenly feels distant, not cold, not cruel, just quietly less invested. And the worst part, it almost never happens overnight. It happens slowly, quietly, through a tiny habit you're doing without even noticing. It begins with good intentions. You care, you want things to work, you want to be honest, open, and dependable. But somewhere along the line, your desire to give becomes a subtle need for reassurance, and that's where everything flips. The silent behavior that lowers your value is simple. You start managing her perception of you instead of living in your own center. You over-explain, you justify. You clarify things she didn't even question. You rush to fix feelings she didn't ask you to fix. You try to reassure her before she even expresses doubt. On the surface, it looks like kindness. But on a deeper psychological level, it sends one message. You need her approval to feel stable. And once she feels that, everything changes. Women don't consciously think, "Oh, he needs validation." Instead, she simply starts feeling something is off. Something in your manner becomes too soft, too eager, too available. Not in a loving way, but in a way that suggests you've shifted from presence to pursuit. Presence is attractive. Pursuit, when not reciprocated, is pressure. And here's the hidden truth most men never see. When you try to control how she sees you, you stop being the man she was originally drawn to, because she wasn't attracted to a man who over-explained 10-step reasons for his decisions. She wasn't attracted to a man who apologized for things that didn't require apologies. She wasn't attracted to a man who needed emotional GPS signals every 5 minutes to feel secure. She was attracted to a man who moved with confidence, not the loud, performative kind, but the quiet kind that comes from inner steadiness, the kind Stoics talked about. Marcus Aurelius never wrote a sentence that said, "Explain yourself so people like you." Epictetus never said, "Seek approval so others feel comfortable." Instead, they taught the opposite. A man stands firm in who he is, even if others misunderstand him. That kind of presence makes a woman pay attention. It makes her curious. It makes her respect the boundaries you don't have to announce because they show naturally in how you carry yourself. But when you slip into the pattern of wanting her reassurance, the energy shifts. She won't feel upset with you. She won't always pull away dramatically. But she will stop treating you as the man at the center of his life and start seeing you as the man orbiting hers. That shift is the real danger. Most men respond by giving more, texting more, explaining more, unknowingly making the entire problem worse. But once you stop this silent behavior, the dynamic resets, your presence returns, your steadiness returns. And suddenly, she feels the difference. Stoicism isn't about being cold. It's not about shutting down your emotions or acting like nothing bothers you. A lot of people get that wrong. Stoicism is about mastering your inner world so the outer world doesn't control you, and that's exactly why it transforms how women see you. See, most men react. A woman pulls back slightly, and he immediately compensates. She seems distracted, and he tries harder. She gets distant, and he becomes emotionally louder. Not because he's weak, but because he's afraid of losing something he values. But Stoicism flips this entire pattern. Instead of reacting to her emotions, it teaches you to respond to your principles. Instead of chasing reassurance, It teaches you to find stability in your own actions. Instead of trying to control her perception, it teaches you to control the only thing you actually can yourself. And that shift is magnetic. A woman docente feels drawn to a man who is emotionally tangled in her every mood. She feels drawn to a man who's grounded enough to see clearly even when emotions rise. Someone who isn't rattled by silence. Someone who doesn't panic when she needs space. Someone who doesn't crumble when something doesn't go perfectly. That's steadiness. It's rare, and women notice it almost instantly. Let's go deeper. A Stoic man doesn't ask, "What does she think of me?" He asks, "Who am I choosing to be right now?" He doesn't think, "Why is she pulling away?" He thinks, "What do I control in this moment?" He doesn't panic about the future of the relationship. He stays grounded in the present because that's where his power actually exists. And here's where the shift becomes visible to her. Women feel safe with a man who is safe within himself. Not safe because he's clingy. Not safe because he's overly accommodating. Safe because nothing external, not moods, not distance, not temporary discomfort, shakes his core. When you embody that mindset, she sees you differently. Not as someone who reacts to her, but as someone who stands on his own 2 feet. Someone she can trust, lean into, and respect. There's something else, too. Something subtle but unbelievably powerful. Stoicism creates emotional contrast. When you're calm, while others are chaotic. When you're steady, when others are spiraling. When you speak with intention instead of desperation. That contrast makes you stand out. It makes your presence feel different. It shows her you're not just another man chasing approval. You're a man steering his own ship. Even if she doesn't articulate it, she feels it. Respect grows. Curiosity returns. Attraction deepens. Because a Stoic man isn't hiding his emotions, he's leading them. And leadership of the self is one of the most attractive qualities a man can display, especially in a world where so many people are driven by impulse. This is why Stoicism changes everything. Not because it teaches you to disconnect, but because it teaches you to rise above the noise she expects most men to get lost in. There's a moment every man reaches when he realizes he has been giving too much of himself away, not because he is weak, but because he genuinely cares. And caring isn't the problem. The real issue starts when your care becomes a substitute for your own direction. That's where purposeful distance comes in, not as a mind game, not as manipulation, but as a necessary reset. When a woman senses that you've made her the center of your emotional balance, something inside her shifts, not because she wants you to suffer, but because she instinctively feels the weight of responsibility you just placed on her. She never asked to carry your sense of identity. She never wanted that pressure. But when you're always available, always responsive, always ready to drop everything, you quietly teach her that you, Dante, have anything else going on, nothing that anchors you, nothing that competes with her attention. And that's when your value begins to fade. Pulling back with purpose changes this instantly. It reminds both of you that you have a life anchored in mission, not dependency. It signals self-respect without needing to say a single word. Women don't fall for distance, they fall for purpose. And when you create space because you're investing in yourself, she feels that difference. Purposeful distance isn't silence. It's not punishment. It's not disappearing. It's simply realigning your energy away from worrying about her reactions and back toward the things that make you whole. Your goals, your health, your discipline, your direction. And here's the fascinating part. When you stop overgiving, a psychological vacuum forms. Humans naturally notice what's missing more than what's present. When your attention becomes less constant, she doesn't feel abandoned. She feels awareness. She starts noticing the absence of your presence in ways she didn't before. That's where curiosity returns. Curiosity brings attention, and attention brings effort. But here's the key. This only works if your pullback is authentic. When you reduce your availability because you're genuinely working on yourself, hitting the gym, focusing on your craft, building things, improving your life, she senses purpose, not pettiness. But if you pull back just to get a reaction, she feels that too, and it backfires every time. Stoicism makes the entire process cleaner. It teaches one central truth. If something is outside your control, don't chase it. Strengthen what you can command: your attitude, your time, your schedule, your path. When those things become your priority, your value rises naturally. You stop needing her reassurance because you have structure within yourself. You stop worrying about losing her because you're guided by something bigger than approval. And that shift, that quiet seismic shift, changes everything. She doesn't just notice, she gravitates. Not toward the version of you that was always available, but toward the version that moves with direction and doesn't lose himself in the process. Pulling back with purpose doesn't push her away. It pulls you back into your own center. And that is exactly where attraction grows again. There is a moment, a powerful one, when a man stops centering his world around a woman and starts centering it around himself. And the shift is so subtle, yet so profound, that people around him feel it before he even says a word. His energy changes, his posture changes, his presence hits differently. And women notice that shift immediately. See, when you're overly focused on winning her approval, you unconsciously shrink your world. You minimize your ambitions. You delay your goals. You put your dreams on the back burner so you can keep her close. But what you don't realize is that you slowly smothering the very qualities that made you attractive in the first place. A man without self-priority becomes predictable, overly accessible, emotionally dependent, not because he wants to be, but because everything he does begins revolving around her reactions. But when you flip the script, when you choose to prioritize your mission, your development, your self-respect, everything changes instantly. Self-priority makes you more disciplined, more grounded, more intentional, more difficult to replace, and humans, by nature, value what's not easily replaced. A woman feels the difference when you walk with purpose, when your time isn't something you give away freely, but something she knows you invest carefully. She feels it when you have boundaries, not walls. She feels it when your life has momentum, and you're not waiting for her energy to activate yours. Most men believe focusing on themselves will make her feel neglected. But ironically, the opposite is true. When you're genuinely invested in your life, she feels drawn into your gravity. Your ambition becomes attractive. Your discipline becomes magnetic. Your self-respect becomes a signal that says, I am secure within myself. And security, not neediness, not desperation, is what women trust. Think about the great Stoic idea. The man who conquers himself is the man who cannot be conquered. When you conquer your impulses, when you control your time, when you set your priorities, when you stop fighting for her attention and start fighting for your purpose, you naturally become the kind of man she wants to invest in. Because women don't fall for the man who abandons his life to be available. They fall for the man whose life is full. A man who invites her into his world, not a man who gives up his world for her. Self-priority creates emotional contrast. It shows her you're not lost without her. It shows her that your happiness doesn't depend on her mood. It shows her that you're whole and not waiting to be completed. And the moment she feels that, her behavior toward you changes. She becomes more attentive, more respectful, more invested, more curious about your time, your thoughts, your plans. Because now, she's drawn to a man who stands firmly in who he is. A man who leads himself. And in a world full of people pulled around by every emotion, every distraction, every fear, a man with self-priority is rare, and rare is always attractive. Every man wants to feel chosen, not just tolerated, not just accepted, but genuinely prioritized. But most men go about it the wrong way. They try to earn priority through effort, attention, and emotional availability, believing that if they give enough, they'll finally be seen. But priority is never earned through overextension. It's earned through presence, boundaries, and self-leadership. To become the man she prioritizes, you must first become the man you prioritize. This means living with intention, not impulse. Acting from principles, not insecurity. Making decisions that align with your purpose, not your fear of losing her. A woman naturally invests in a man who invests in himself. Not because he's distant, not because he's cold, but because he radiates something rare, a sense of internal obligation to be more than he was yesterday. Women don't chase perfection. They chase direction. They want to feel like they are walking beside a man who is walking towards something meaningful. When you live by Stoic principles, that direction becomes undeniable. A Stoic man doesn't try to control her emotions. He controls his own. He doesn't panic when something shifts. He steadies himself. He doesn't measure his worth by how she responds. He measures it by whether he acted with character. And this is the turning point that many men never reach. When you stop trying to win her approval, you become the man who naturally earns her respect. She begins reaching out first again, not out of fear, but out of genuine interest. She starts checking on you, not because she doubts, but because she cares. She listens more closely, responds more quickly, invests more deeply, because now your value isn't something you're offering, it's something you're embodying. Women don't prioritize the man who prioritizes them at the expense of himself. They prioritize the man who brings value into their life simply by being who he is. A man who is emotionally stable, a man who is mission-driven, a man who doesn't run from discomfort, a man who doesn't crumble under pressure, a man whose presence calms the room instead of adding chaos to it. This isn't about playing roles, it's about becoming solid. And when you become solid, she feels safe in a way that has nothing to do with protection and everything to do with trust. She trusts your silence, she trusts your leadership, she trusts your boundaries, she trusts your decisions. The greatest Stoic truth about relationships is this: a woman follows a man who leads himself. Not through force, not through dominance, but through inner gravity. A pull created by discipline, purpose, and self-respect. When you embody that gravity, you don't have to demand priority. You don't have to beg for attention. You don't have to fight for a place in her life, because she will choose you willingly, consistently, and with intention. Not because she needs you, but because she recognizes the strength of a man who needs himself first. There comes a point in every man's life when he finally realizes that the relationship he was chasing, the attention he was craving, the validation he was depending on, was never the real issue. The issue was the distance between who he truly is and who he became while trying to be enough for someone else. The real journey, the Stoic journey, isn't about winning her back. It isn't about making her chase you. It isn't about flipping the script so you finally feel in control. It's about returning to yourself. Because the truth is simple: you were never meant to live as a shadow of your own potential. You weren't built to orbit someone else's emotions. You weren't designed to shrink your purpose so someone else could feel more comfortable. You were built to rise, to grow, to walk with direction, not desperation. And when a man finally remembers that, when he stops over-explaining, stops over-giving, stops over-sacrificing, stops over-chasing, something incredible happens. He doesn't become a colder man. He becomes a clearer one. Clarity brings calm. Calm brings strength. Strength brings presence, and presence brings respect. This is the transformation every Stoic leader understood. When you command yourself, the world responds differently. And yes, she responds differently too. When you move with purpose, she feels it. When you protect your time, she respects it. When you stop needing her reassurance, she becomes more secure around you. When you set boundaries without anger, she feels safer in your presence. When you live with emotional self-leadership, she instinctively leans toward you, not because you forced her to, not because you manipulated anything, but because people naturally gravitate towards someone who is anchored in themselves. The kind of man whose silence isn't avoidance, it's composure. The kind of man whose boundaries aren't walls, they're standards. The kind of man whose actions aren't performances, they're reflections of principle. The kind of man who doesn't run from discomfort, he studies it, understands it, grows from it. This is the man women prioritize. This is the man people follow. This is the man you are always capable of being. And here's the final truth, the one most men spend years avoiding. Your relationship with yourself sets the tone for every relationship in your life. When you treat yourself as a priority, she mirrors that energy. When you treat yourself with respect, she respects you more deeply. When you choose your own direction, she chooses to walk beside you, not ahead, not behind, but beside. So this isn't the end of the story. This is the beginning of a new one. A story where you are no longer waiting for someone to recognize your value because you already know it. A story where your purpose is stronger than your fear, your character louder than your insecurities, and your presence greater than your need for validation. A story where you stop asking, "Will she prioritize me?" and start becoming the man she can't help but prioritize, because when you rise, everything around you rises with you. And that right there is the quiet power of a man who has returned to himself